Pocong. Kampung Lanjut was a remote village nestled deep in the Malaysian rainforest, cut off from the modern world. It was a place of old traditions, where the villagers still believed in spirits and the unseen. The most feared of all was the Pocong, the restless soul of the dead, wrapped in its white burial shroud, hopping through the night in search of someone to release it from its torment. Azman, a young man in his early 20s, had returned to Kampung Lanjut after years of living in the city. His parents had passed away, and he inherited their old house, a decaying wooden structure that creaked with every breeze. Azman was skeptical of the old superstitions and brushed off the villagers' warnings about staying out after dark. On his first night back, Azman sat on the front porch, the jungle around him alive with the sounds of insects and distant animal calls. He felt a sense of unease, but he shook it off, attributing it to the unfamiliar silence of the countryside. As the night deepened, a thick mist began to roll in, wrapping the village in a cold, damp blanket. The air grew heavy, and the usual jungle noises fell eerily silent. Azman's phone buzzed with a message from his old friend, Rashid. "Be careful tonight. It's the night of the Pocong. Don't leave your house after midnight." Azman chuckled, dismissing it as a joke. But as the clock struck midnight, something changed. The air turned colder, and a foul stench filled the air, like rotting flesh. Azman felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if something malevolent was watching him. Suddenly he heard a faint sound, a soft thudding, like something heavy bouncing on the ground. Thud. 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 The sound grew louder, closer, until it was right outside his door. Azman's heart pounded in his chest as he slowly turned his head toward the window. In the dim light, he saw a figure standing in the mist. It was wrapped in a white shroud, its face obscured by the cloth, but its hollow eye socket seemed to stare directly at him. The figure was a Pocong, its body stiff, bound tightly in its burial shroud. It swayed slightly, as if struggling to break free. Azman froze in terror, unable to look away. The Pocong began to move, hopping closer with each dreadful thud. It reached the porch, and Azman could hear the sound of its bound feet dragging across the wooden floorboards. The stench was unbearable now, and Azman gagged, fighting the urge to vomit. The Pocong stopped in front of the door. Azman could hear it breathing a raspy, wet sound that sent chills down his spine. He knew the stories of Pocong was the spirit of someone improperly buried, its soul trapped in the shroud until someone untied the knot at the top of its head. If it found you, it would beg for release, and if you refused, it would take your life in its place. The doorknob rattled as the Pocong tried to enter. Azman's mind raced. Should he help the spirit? What if it was a trick, and the Pocong was merely luring him to his death? The rattling stopped, and the air grew still, thick with tension. Then, a voice, barely more than a whisper, seeped through the door. "Help me." Azman shuddered. The voice was weak, filled with unimaginable pain. He knew he had to act quickly, but fear paralyzed him. The Pocong began to scratch at the door, the sound of its nails grating against the wood, desperate and frantic. Summoning every ounce of courage, Azman grabbed a knife from the kitchen. His hands trembled as he approached the door. He had to untie the knot, but the thought of facing the Pocong made his blood run cold. Suddenly the scratching stopped, replaced by silence. Azman opened the door a crack, peering into the mist. The Pocong was gone, the porch empty. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. A cold breath brushed the back of his neck. Azman spun around, but it was too late. The Pocong was inside, its ghastly face inches from his. Its mouth was sewn shut, and its eyes, empty voids, locked onto his. In that moment, Azman realized the truth. This Pocong wasn't seeking release. It wanted revenge. The knife slipped from his hand as the Pocong lunged at him, wrapping its cold, rotting arms around his neck, squeezing the life out of him. The last thing Azman saw was the Pocong's face, twisted in a grotesque smile as it dragged him into the darkness. His screams echoed through the night, but no one came to help. The villagers knew better than to interfere with the dead. When dawn broke, the mist lifted, and Kampung Lanjut returned to its usual quiet. Azman's house stood empty, the door wide open. His body was never found, but the villagers knew what had happened. They whispered prayers for his soul, knowing he had joined the ranks of the restless dead. And on certain nights, when the mist rolls in and the air turns cold, the villagers hear it, the thud, thud, thud of a pocong hopping through the village, searching for someone to take its place in the afterlife.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more tales from the dark. Until next time, stay safe and beware of the shadows.